This part. I will just say, this is a session that I have done for years, and I am in the process of handing it off to Curtis and Amy to do. And so Curtis and Amy have totally planned and prepared for today's session. And Amy's feeling under the weather. She's with us, but she's feeling under the weather and her voice is needing a break. So I'm going to fill in parts of today's session that Amy was going to do. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Curtis and let Curtis drive the session overall. And Amy can jump in if she needs to.
Yeah, can we put the Mentimeter up and get to the...
Yep.
Oh goodness.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, but there we go. I had shrunk it down. Can we go to the agenda slide?
So how about if welcome everyone. This is our official sort of start of the recording. Welcome everyone to today's social system mapping sense making session for March 4th, 2024. And now I will go to the agenda slide. And I'm sorry if I'm... Go ahead.
We're doing good. Yeah, so today is an adjustment, as Christine said. Amy and I have been excited to do this, but she's sick today. And so Christine's going to take over for Amy, and I will be introducing a fascinating tool later on in our session. So we're going to meet each other in just a minute, and then we'll look over some of the basics about social systems mapping, get to meet each other a little bit more in small groups and breakout sessions. And then we'll look at how a social systems map transforms a system. And then I'm going to talk about pattern spotting, which is another human systems dynamics tool, which I've been inundated with in the last week or two and found to be really useful. And we'll do some more practice with that in breakouts and have some discussion afterwards. So do we have a introduce slide thing? Yeah. So if we could take just a couple of minutes here at the beginning and throw in the Mentimeter, your name, pronouns, where you're at, and what network or networks you're working with. That'd be great. Is there a link in the...
There's a link in the chat. Yep.
There's a link in the chat for the Menti. And if you click on that, you can see that there's a way to engage with the Mentimeter. Hello, Amy from Memphis. Brian from LA. I always wondered, Brian, is the word donut in your coalition? Is there a tongue-in-cheek sense to that?
In what way?
I mean, it's the word donut.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a tongue-in-cheek in that it's got two concentric circles which form a donut.
Right. Does anybody ever make jokes about sprinkles on the donut or anything like that?
Sometimes.
All right. Mary from San Francisco, Christine, Minneapolis, Justin, across the river from me in Portland. I think I saw Denise for a minute before. All right, let's click into the next screen. One of the things that we are working on together is visioning, sharing our visions and visioning with each other about what we are hoping for, what we're looking to see happen in the coalitions and movements and systems that we're all involved in. So the question is, what is the possibility you envision in the system you are engaged in? I always warn people in workshops that when they proclaim a possibility, they take on a degree of ownership just by making that proclamation. It actually causes the reality of that possibility to show up in the universe. I always feel like I'm issuing a heavy warning when I say that, but I'm more excited about it than trying to make it heavy. Shrinking the wealth gap. Got a theme going in the Mentimeter answers so far. All right. Well, that's good stuff. Changing mindsets is one of the big things that we're talking about as a sort of a general theme. So that's a really good one for really central to what we're doing today. All right, curious to know with everybody in the group, we go on to the next slide, how familiar you are with social systems mapping. Just want to sort of take a pulse of where we're at as a group today so that we are tuned in well to the individual organism of this group as a entity. This is one of my favorite parts of Mentimeter, that it does graphs, instant graphs. As a data geek, I love to see stuff come together like that. All right. Okay, it's good to know. And then we're going to get into, I think the next thing that we're going to do is an introduction into social systems mapping. Are you ready for that, Christine?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Curtis. So what is social system mapping? Oh, we didn't get that one down. Oh, well, a social system map is basically, I like to say it's a mashup of several different kinds of maps. System map, a stakeholder map, an asset map, a social network map is sort of the foundation of the whole thing, and then concept maps. So if there's a way of looking at information around individuals or around their connections to other dynamics, if there's a way of asking questions about that in a survey-ish context, we can map it in a social system map. So it can be, so there can be a lot of different things going on. So, and we like to say, okay, sorry. Haven't done this in a while and not certain that the slides are in the order that I'm used to them in, because this wasn't set up for me to do. So I was starting to feel a little lost. So we like to say it's a process more than a product. Social system mapping starts from the very beginning of thinking about what are those dimensions that we want to see in the map. What are the kinds of relationships we want to see at that point. We're already doing social system mapping. We're already beginning to engage with this process of thinking more deeply and looking more closely at ourselves as a system to understand the change that the best ways to see, understand, and influence the change that we want to make in the systems that we're working on. So it's online, it's interactive, it's accessible, it's iterative, emergent. dynamic in that things can keep changing. We can keep adding new people to the map. And so, like I said, it's an ongoing collective process that is just building on itself as we proceed. So why are we doing this? Well, the purpose of social system mapping is to support a global movement that you are all working on in one way or another, and that is happening all over the world in all the different places and systems and focuses, etc., to shift from systems of dominance, exploitation, and extraction to systems of connection, reverence, and regeneration. And what we've learned over the last couple decades of doing this kind of work is that that system shifting requires two things. It requires strong networks, and it requires wise change agents who are networked together. So there's both a structural component to what we're talking about and a relational component. So that means that we're working essentially on two fundamental shifts as we're trying to shift systems, one of which is the relational shift, where we are looking at ourselves, shifting our understanding of ourselves from being independent or isolated to being and hardly bounded, rigidly bounded, to being interconnected and interdependent. The other shift is the cognitive shift, which is the wise change agents piece where we are shifting our worldview from a mechanistic worldview to a much more complex and dynamic and living complex systems worldview. And so we like to say that social system mapping can help us look at it from both angles, both from the, sorry, going too fast. So that shift of strong networks of wise change agents, we can look at it from a couple different directions, one of which is the relational. How do we create belonging and build trust and build equity and create strong relationships, interpersonal relationships across differences? And if we're looking at it from that angle, we'll look at it relationally. We can also be looking at it from another angle. And the truth is, it requires us to continually look from both angles, to go back and forth between the cognitive shift and the relational shift. So, and we like to say that social systems mapping from the beginning to the end, the whole process, the social process as well as the technical process, is helping us work on both of those kinds of changes at the same time. So that's that. And I'm handing it back to Curtis. And I'm stop sharing for a moment.
You're handing it back to me. Oh, because we're doing the breakout. Right? Okay.
I think so.
So with that explanation of what social systems mapping is, and the reality that I think all of us on this call are in at least one, if not multiple, social systems change efforts, I'd like to offer an opportunity to get into a breakout with a couple other folks and just share a little bit about the network that you're in and the challenges that you may be facing, and what you're hoping to see happen within that network. So Kara is going to send us into breakout groups for just a few minutes, and you have an opportunity to share a little bit about what's going on in your system. Yeah.
So welcome back. So I'll just go from here for the moment.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope I see some smiles on people's faces, so it looks like you had a good conversation, or it looks like some of you enjoyed some part of the conversation at least. I hope it was good for all of you. And so normally, and this is a piece that I was going to step in for Amy, normally we, at this point, we would, we were planning on sharing the social system mapping theory of transformation. And we're, our pace is a little bit leisurely today. And we know that all of you have seen it. Some of you have seen it many, many times. And so what we've decided is to skip it for today, unless if anyone feels really strongly that they need to see it before we move forward. If you really want to hear the social system, me go through the social system mapping theory of transformation, raise your hand. Otherwise we'll skip it for today. And I see Brian's hand is raised, so but you're muted.
Not that I want to see it, but I just want to make sure that Justin has seen it.
He has.
Yeah, okay, good. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Curtis,
Justin also has a particular opportunity to pick my brain whenever he wants to on this subject.
Yeah. But and thanks, Brian, for checking in because of just making sure everybody's good. Okay. So having said that, we are now skipping the social system mapping theory of transformation vortex, and I'm going to hand it back to Curtis, and he's going to introduce you to what he needs to introduce. He's going to take it from here.
All right. Kara, can you go to the slide 51 on the Mentimeter?
Christine, do you want to share your screen? I'll probably.
Yeah. Kara is not going to do that because I'm the one doing the slides.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. So actually, this is your sped up version of it.
Everybody getting it?
Is this where you wanted to land? I'm not.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that right? I think so. Yeah. So what we're going to be working on, this tool that we're going to explore this morning together is called pattern spotting. And it is another tool that is offered by the folks at Human Systems Dynamics. And I had the pleasure and work of being immersed in it for the last couple of weeks in preparation for this. And I found it to be really powerful, particularly in the realm of the cognitive shift, the two halves, the relational and the cognitive shift. This is really good for, it has been good for my conscious effort to engage with the outside of my typical perspective, the way that I think, the way that I look at a complex system. And I, in prepping for this, actually, this is one of the things that I've been fascinated by for the last couple of years, this idea of the observer effect. And it's relevant to the idea of pattern spotting, because one of the things that we have learned to be true, particularly in every area of science, is that when we engage with anything, with a system of any kind, we, as part of the system, in that engagement, actually alter the system itself. And so what we're going to be doing for the next half an hour or so in looking at systems is actually going to change the systems. And that's important because it means that we are both in and changing systems together. And so that leads to the next slide. It's the reality that what we observe about our network is not the network itself. What we're looking at is not just the network, but the effects the network exposed to our method of sense making. So sense making, this session dedicated to sense making today is about pattern spotting. Let's look at the next slide. Pattern spotting, you'll see on the right there, a tree. The next image is a more full image of that. Pattern spotting has several different elements of it, but before we get into it, I just want you to take a second and gaze upon this image and let it sort of soak into your neocortex. Just take just a second. Without me suggesting anything at all about how it should affect you. And then let's go to the next slide. And there's an opportunity here to describe the impact that this image has on you. And you'll notice that there's a code at the top. Just ignore that.
Curtis,
As
can I stop you just for a moment?
Yeah.
I'm just noticing Woolard is joining us, and so I just want to acknowledge his presence. And Woolard,
Morning.
we're just partway through the session, and Curtis is just introducing pattern spotting. So as an HSD model and method tool. So just want to welcome you and hand it back to Curtis.
And I don't know if you saw, Willard, there's a link for you to join in the Mentimeter in the chat. But yeah,
And now I need to find my sharing my screen thing again.
Curtis, are we supposed to put only one answer for what the image makes me feel?
you can put, I believe you can put more than one answer, can't you?
Well,
Christine?
I would like to know, do you want us to only put one? Like, what if we feel like calm and protected or something like that?
You can, no, yeah, you can
Okay.
answer.
So just put words in.
However many responses that you have, yeah.
Got it. And we're doing that now, right? Or did I just jump?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so okay. Let me come off.
Good feelings, positive feelings. We are actually being a system even now. And it's interesting to me that watching the comments, the feelings go up there have an effect on the feelings that I have. Rooted. Really good spectrum of feelings here. So I picked this tree after quite a lot of searching, probably 2 hours looking at images on the internet, thinking about what I wanted to use. And I picked this because I feel like on a Monday morning, looking at beauty in nature is a helpful thing. And there's a lot of patterns within this tree. But each one of us comes to the system that we're engaged in with a particular perspective. We carry around a lens that we tend to look through. And the idea of pattern spotting, one of the things that pattern spotting does as a tool is it helps us to expand our lens and look at things from different angles, especially as we do it together. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to briefly explain that there's 5 different ways of sort of considering a system when you're engaged with it. What's Glenda's last name? The gal who came up with this, Glenda
Ouyang.
Oya.
Ouyang.
Huh?
Ouyang.
Ouyang.
Yeah.
So this is something that Human Systems Dynamics, which is primarily a creation of Glenda Ouyang, has come up with. And the way that it works is, first, you just sort of take in whatever it is that you're considering engaging with, looking at in a general sense. So overall, not necessarily looking at specific details, but what is the impression that you get, the sense that you have, which we sort of did with the feelings thing. So that's the first spot, or first way. In general, I notice. And then the second part, in general, I notice. So you hold the generality that you've come up with, and then you notice that there are, or you notice if there are details, outliers, things that are different in some small way or a significant way, but a few of them that are different than the generality that you've noticed. So making kind of a comparison between the general and something that's different than that. And then the middle one, on the other hand, is similar to the in general, but except that it's sort of a larger comparison contrast. So if you're looking at maybe a voter map of the world that shows, or of the United States that shows Democrat and Republican in blue and red, you would say something like, or you'd notice in that on one hand, there are lots of blue, and on the other hand, there are lots of red. So not necessarily outliers, but sort of larger categories of differences in whatever it is that you're looking at. And then the fourth one, I'm surprised at. So sort of noticing, allowing yourself to notice things that you hadn't expected to see. Now that you've gone through these first three, what's starting to show up that you are surprised by? Either you were expecting and wasn't there, or that you weren't expecting and was there. So those are the four that are sort of allowing your brain and your perspective to expand and shift and take in more. And then the last one is sort of a, well, now that you've got those four things and you're holding on to those four things, what are the questions? What's the curiosity? I wonder, or I'm puzzled by. What is the thing that you would like to understand that has come out of those four ways of looking? How's that sound? Okay. Let's try it. You guys up for that? Well,
Yep.
let me do that differently. We're gonna try this now. Does anybody is there anybody who needs something before we can try that? How's that, Christine?
Perfect.
All right. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, we're going to see this tree on each one of these slides. And the first one is, in general, I notice. I'm sorry, we can go to the next slide. On my screen, it says responding is off. Did I do that?
Let me see if I can proceed. I just was able to turn it on.
Okay. All right. So the first one, in general, I notice. Let's just take a couple of minutes and immerse ourselves in this tree and there's shapes. Sky made that it goes from large to smaller and smaller. sun peeking through. That's interesting. I would not have noticed that. All right. So that's the in general piece. And then let's move on to the next one. So what is in this next one, keeping in mind the things that you noticed in general, are there things that are different than that or contrasting to what you noticed generally in some small detail? An outlier is the word that really helps me understand this particular part. There's some small thing that doesn't fit with the generality or fits with the generality in a different way than you expected it to. So twiggy branches. Oh man. Those sun lines shining through. Wish I could have found a picture of like with a little animal hiding in a corner someplace for people to see. Different shades of green. Oh yeah. Black and red. Okay. Right side more dense than the left. All right. This is great. Great for a Monday morning, letting our brains stretch and flex a little bit. Okay, so in the next one, let's skip to the next slide. So on one hand, might be there's a big trunk, and on the other hand, there's lots of leaves. So we're looking at the sort of main components and their connection or relationship or contrast with each other in one way or another. So on one hand, you notice, on the other hand, you notice. It's the same thing we just noticed. Yeah, see the wilderness. Inside, yeah, expansive outside. Oh, this is so great. Mm. Mm. Dry and rough. On the other hand, the leaves are soft and playful. A lot of contrast between the wood and the leaves. Contrast and connection. Okay. All right, let's do one more of these first four. The I'm surprised that. So what is something that you are seeing that you weren't expecting, or you aren't seeing that you were expecting? And this may be because of the first three, that you realized that you were expecting something that's not there, or you weren't expecting something that was there. I know that's happening for me. It's happening for me mostly because of hearing your input to this. So doing this collaboratively is much different. I've been practicing this exercise looking at systems maps on my own, and it's significantly different doing it with other brains at the same time. It's true. I wonder if somebody like photoshopped the birds out of the tree or something. That's interesting. Upward orientation. I also just realized I can't tell how far up the tree I am. It could be 60 feet in the air clinging to the trunk, or standing on the ground. Hmm. I recently read in Stephen Powers' book, The Overstory, that trees are basically doing all the same things that humans do, just at such a much slower rate that we don't notice it. And so we think they're an inanimate object, but they're fully alive and have heartbeats and relationships. Okay, so those four, the way that I have experienced this, and it might be different for you, but those first four really set us up for this last question. So if we go to the last slide, the last question is about, what do you wonder? Is there something that you're puzzled by in looking at this organism, which is a system, which is a whole bunch of systems interacting with each other? Is there something that makes you wonder or makes you curious? Something you want to figure out or understand deeper that you don't get yet? Just in me, like, explaining this, keep in mind, I'm explaining it from a particular perspective. Patterns, these five pattern spotting techniques show up in a different way for every person who uses them, and every time that you use them, and in every situation you use them, they work different. So very simple, basic questions with nearly endless complexity. a different group of 10 people would come up with different scenarios. What are you puzzled by? What do you wonder? Hmm. Who took the photo? The stories. I would highly recommend that book too, The Overstory, if you haven't read it, by Stephen Powers. It's very inspiring. Fantastic writing. It will make you love trees more. All right, well, thank you for engaging with that. I hope it has been as much of a uplifting experience for you as it has been for me. Yeah. I'm curious to know on the next slide, just wondering where you're at as we have been putting some effort into making a cognitive shift. Where are you in your cognitive load, kind of mental load are you carrying? While you're filling that out, one of the things that we're valuing here is the cognitive shift through experience versus just talking about it. You probably noticed as we sat and looked at the tree through 5 different pictures, it affected our perception, our engagement, the depth. Things came up towards the end that weren't coming up at the beginning, and we're literally creating new synaptic connections in our brains that give us a greater capacity for engaging with systems. And so we want to continue with that experience. And what we're going to do for the next few minutes, you can turn your camera off, stay on screen, whatever you want to do. I have 4 different links to offer you of different maps. So Kara, can you put those in the chat? Oh, there they are. That are in the chat already. The first one is our community of practice map, and it'll start out on the directory screen. If you haven't engaged with it before, you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's different views of that map you can look at. The same is true for the next one. The Weaving Lab map is a map that was shown to us a 3 weeks ago that has some really interesting elements to it. And then the Global Situation Analysis is another one I just picked from Kumu's gallery, and as well as the Celebrity Ice Bucket Challenge, if you want to go a little bit lighter than some of the other ones. So feel free, pick one of those maps, open it up, and then just go through those 5 pattern spotting tools, the tool with 5 parts, and practice it a little bit. We'll take about 5 minutes and just see where your heart, brain, and body take you as you engage with those questions looking at a map. You can click on a view and just sit and stare at that and go through it for 5 minutes, or you can go through different views. I've done both in the last few days and they produce different results. So however that works for you. Anybody have any questions about what we're doing? We're not going into breakout sessions. We're just going to sit here and play with this a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll do this until just a little past the top of the hour. And I'm going to throw those questions in the chat. For 5. All right, if you could wrap up. Let's take a few minutes and have a conversation about what you noticed and how pattern spotting worked or didn't work for you. What was your experience like? Anybody have a description of their experience or thoughts, comments, observations to share? What maps did you all pick? Denise?
First of all, this is a really great exercise. I found it was a lot easier to do with a tree than a map, and I chose the community, this social systems map to do. And I didn't get very far though. I can share my thoughts. So
Please.
for this map, I really like the orange color. I had it in the directory view and I just said, I like the orange color. It felt very bright and inviting. And I was thinking about that in terms of having the gray, shaded circles for some reason. It was just something small. I kind of tried to go back to what you were having us do with the tree, how do I feel? So I just looked at it in terms of feeling. It felt very inviting. It looked dense. I liked the circle. And then I only got to the second one. I said, in general, I noticed that, but I also noticed looking a little more deeply that as a community, it seems we're split on adding pictures, because as much as I like the orange, ideally it would be faces. And that's as far as I got. And then I couldn't get any further, but that was the map. But this was fun.
Thanks, Denise. Woolard?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I kind of felt like I needed more time to really take in the information so that I could begin to make some sense of it and notice patterns. But it probably happened partly because I started out with the global situation analysis. And then trying to figure out, okay, well, what, and so I just needed more time with that, and feeling the pressure of being able to come back with something. I went to the weaving lab map and had a similar experience. It's like, okay, I just need a little bit more time, to be able to, begin to make the meaning making process. But I see this as a useful tool, taking the different perspectives.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of wisdom in recognizing that trying to absorb a complex system, it just requires a lot of time. Yeah. Christine?
I used the Ice Bucket Challenge map, and I first I noticed that there was a lot of men on the map and not very many women. And then I noticed that the only coded distinction that they were making had to do with their field, like astronaut, author, government. And so as I was clicking on them, I was like, oh, so in general, a lot of men. In general, the focus is on the field. I noticed that I noticed that they didn't say who said yes and who said no, or who took the challenge and who didn't take the challenge. I thought that would have been a dimension that they'd use. And then I noticed that, oh, there is a little gray shadow around some of them. And when I clicked on that, there's a little tag that says WTF. And that seems to be code for, I don't think they did it, but I can't prove that they didn't. So then I thought, okay, well, they've got that covered. And the other thing I noticed was there were a lot more dimensions that I wanted to see than that they, like their gender, who asked who, who asked who is spoken about. It could have also been in the arrows. Anyway, there were a number of sort of dimensionality things that made me notice what my head does when I look at things like this, which is, I think, in categories and data and what else should be showing here. So
yeah, that one is I wouldn't necessarily think of that as a social systems map. It's missing a lot of the elements that would make it a social systems map.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'm curious. I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit more. Maybe that's for another time, because when I did the same one, Christine, went lighthearted this morning and watched a bunch of people dunk cold water on themselves, which was fun. So I'm new to this, so I want to understand why you guys didn't think of it as a social systems map, because one of the things that I noticed was like, some of it made sense. Oh, so-and-so, like the band Motley Crue got called out by Alice Cooper, or Alice Cooper calls out Motley Crue, and then Motley Crue calls out Kiss and Metallica and whoever. That made sense. But Tim Cook, founder of Apple, called out Dr. Dre, which is not a connection you would expect. But then all of a sudden now Dre is connecting out Eminem, and now you've got this whole new branch of people engaged that might not have otherwise been engaged. So my brain did start thinking of it as a social systems map, but I know that my understanding is very limited. So unpack why you both thought that this is not a social systems map.
Curtis, can I go first?
I talk to Justin about this all the time. I would love for him to hear from somebody else.
Please, Christine.
Okay. So here's the thing. I coined this term. So I'm the person who first said what a social system map is, and I coined the term to define what the kind of mapping that we do is, because people didn't often, they just thought that it was like a social network analysis map, and it's more than that, and it's more complex, both more dynamic and more complex. And so I felt a need to come up with a new term. And so
Got it.
I feel authorized to say what it is. And the differences are, so first of all, a social system map is how this map was generated was by somebody doing some research, looking online and seeing the implications in, doing searches on global the Ice Bucket Challenge, and then saying who challenged who. So a person or a small team sourced this data in a social system map. The data is sourced by the people in the network directly, with each person saying they're representing themselves, both themselves as a node and themselves in their relationships. And so the sourcing of it is different. The dynamicism of it, a social system map, is something where the data is stored in the map and can continually be added to, and new members can be added to without a person having to go and do more research. So it's much more updatable and dynamic. And the focus, there's a focus as much on, well, another, like in this particular map, in the iceberg challenge, you can only see the relationships that were inferred or referred to explicitly in the videos of the iceberg, wherever, whatever web research was being done. But what you
Mhm.
can't see does Matt Naiman know, you know, Jeffrey Katzenberg? Does Bill Gates know Kermit the Frog? You can't see all the relationships of all the players that they're willing to share. Whereas in a social system app, we're not prioritizing one dimensionality of relationship, where
Got it,
you're
got it, got it.
saying, of all the people on this map, for everybody on this map, what are the relationships that you have? So it's way more dense and overwhelming and confusing. But it's more democratic in what it's like, what relationships it's represent. I don't know if democratic's the right word, but it's not just about one kind of relationship.
Got it. And so this is basically saying who talked to who about one particular topic.
Yep.
Got
Yep.
it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll just add, and it's also, a social system map is not just looking at the relationships, who talk to who does what with who, but it's also trying to get as full a picture of the individuals in the network and their relationship to the broader system.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Whereas in most maps, there's one dimension and there's one kind of relationship that we're looking at. In this instance, it was who took the ice bucket who challenged who to take the ice bucket challenge. And
Yeah.
so it's the
Got it.
one dimension of relationship and then one dimension of the individuals. Did they or didn't they? Or here's the video of them doing it. There's nothing more. Oh, in their field of
Mhm.
work.
What you're saying reminds me of how when Curtis and I are talking, you say that a lot of times we focus on the nodes, but it's
Mhm.
actually the relationships.
Yeah.
It's the relationships that are actually the thing that's more, well, I don't really know how to finish that sentence, but
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, that there's like, it's not quite so topic based and one dimensional, but that there's a relationship to the other people you're connected to, people way on the other side of the map, and then the like the thing itself. And I'm kind of saying it out loud to just
Yeah.
solidify my understanding of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for that explanation. That helps.
Yep. And I'll just add one more piece, which is philosophically, I mean, the whole underlying impulse as we were building the sumApp tool in order to gather this data in this way, I was looking to be able to map in this way, was to be able to see more dimensions of the individuals so that we can understand what role they play in the system, so that we can understand who's benefiting from things being the way they are and who's not, and we can start to see how things are flowing through the system at a level that isn't purely social, but includes power and privilege and resource flows and these bigger things. Because we can see a network, we can see a social network and infer a lot of things about the connections in it, but what we can't see in that is who's related to what kinds of powers, who's related to what kinds of perspectives, who's related to what kinds of experience. And if we don't see that systemic level, it's hard to change the system. We're sort of making guesses about, yeah, this person is influential, but that doesn't necessarily, it might be that they're just a social butterfly. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have the kind of influence or that they have the kind of
That's really
insight
helpful.
or the kind of experience that we need. And
Yeah.
so to really see and understand and influence the system, we need to understand more deeply what's going on in that system. And so that's the impulse behind social system mapping.
That's really helpful.
Thank you, Christine.
Thanks for letting me say that. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to expound for a moment. Okay, I'm going to shut up.
So what we are going to do next is spend a little bit more time in small groups focused on one particular map. So I put the link for the map that we're going to look at, which is the Weaving Lab map, which is the last one that we looked at is that a deep dive? The last deep dive? Or yeah. Anyway, so we've been exposed to this map. It's fairly new, and it's people from our community of practice who have been putting it together. One of them is here with us. Denise, would you like to take a minute and give us a quick intro into this, since you have blood, sweat, and tears invested in it?
No, you can go. No, it's
All right,
totally
okay.
fine. No, go ahead. You're doing a great job. And I'm actually very curious to see what people say without any kind of
All right.
backdrop.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Just didn't
totally
want to
fine.
pass up the opportunity for you to.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. But no,
I'm
go ahead. You're doing a great job.
Okay, this map has some really unique and beautiful elements to it that I haven't seen in other maps. And it's the one that I have been using to practice pattern spotting with. So I can assure you that there's lots of patterns to spot in here. Again, we're going to take 10 or 15 minutes to do this. It won't be anywhere near enough time, but I think you will find that doing it with a couple other folks as you're talking about it is going to change the way that your brain works, because you're going to sort of build a three-part interconnected brain. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. Kara will send us into the same breakout rooms we were in before. And then we're going to, oh wait, we didn't do breakout rooms before. We skipped over that part, didn't we? We're going to go into the same breakout rooms that we were going to go into that we didn't go into. And just decide together what part of the map that you want to look at. There's multiple different views. There's two on there that are I haven't seen very often. One is called closing the triangle. Another one is appreciations. Both of those are really interesting views. And just spend some time, go through the 5 questions. They're in the chat. The link's in the chat. Any questions? So let's do 10 minutes or 9 minutes with a 60-second close. And we'll see you back here after that. Particularly curious about wondering.
And Brian had put his hand up for a second.
I think he was just waving goodbye.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll see you all back here in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Something like that.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are bumping up against the end of our time together, and I want to be respectful of that, but I'm curious, did anybody have any big realizations, any wonderings that resulted from your time with the Weaving Labs map?
Can I just speak for 1 minute? I found I loved the observations of my group, and what they were wondering about and what they observed actually was what was happening behind the scenes in a very interesting way. Like, for instance, Willard said, I noticed that there are a lot of invitations for triangles, but not a lot of closing. Our conversation right now is, how do we get people to come back to the map to close the triangles? Because the system isn't set up to alert people that there is an invitation waiting for you. And that's purposeful because we want people to engage with the map. So a lot of what people were mentioning, even Justin, although he simplified his observation thing, a lot of people don't put pictures up. That is something to think about. Is it this that people, for us at the back end, do they just go on quickly and add their profile? Or is there a resistance to adding a photo or even an icon? So there are a lot of, it spoke to what's going on behind the scenes as an observer. I didn't say much, but I don't know if other people want to say. So I found they're very astute observations and wonderings.
I will say that I've kind of looked at the map from the perspective of it offers a number of features. But what are the benefits for the participants, and how do we, move that part?
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to propose we skip the announcements because I think everybody here knows about them, and Justin can be told by you, and I think everybody else is
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
on the list.
how did you find the pattern spotting experience? Does that seem to be a useful practice?
I think it allowed me to really quickly look at the Weaving Lab map and yeah, usually my looks at maps are in depth and not quick, but I think the questions help me go through all the views and have an overall picture and sort of questions.
Cool. Well, thank you,
it was
everyone.
great. I thought it
Go
was
ahead, Denise.
fantastic and something we can definitely transfer to other maps. And I just wanted to say to you and Amy, and I know she's sick, and to Christine for standing in. I found this session really clear and helpful, and something I'm going to borrow moving forward. Steal, actually, moving forward, straight up, as I engage with my community. So thank you to all of the participants.
Excellent.
That's great.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's been a pleasure to share Monday morning screens and pattern spotting with you. Kara did put links to the next 3 sessions in the chat if you wanted to copy and paste that someplace before we jump off. But yeah, hope you guys have a wonderful week. Any other for the good of the orders that need to be offered?
Should we do our goodbye ritual?
Yeah, I can't remember what it is.
Okay,
we
so
should.
I'm gonna count down in just a moment. I'm gonna count down 3, 2, 1. In the meantime, you can all unmute yourselves. And then this is our closing, is just to give each other our blessings and our best wishes for the rest of our days, the day today. So, or the week, whatever, going forward. So if you're gonna do it, go ahead and unmute 3, and then we just all jump off. So this is our goodbye. 3, Curtis, are you ready for our goodbye?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay.
Ready.
So 3, 2, 1. Thank you all.
Bye.
Everybody,
Bye-bye.
have a great
Bye-bye.
week.
So happy
Take
to see
care.
you. Bye-bye.